In this section, we'll continue the discussion of assessing probability and impact. In performing this analysis, the project manager would use predefined measurements that describe what value to place on a risk event and what that value means. It's found in the risk management plan, and if not, it's developed during this process. The project manager determines and assesses the probability and impact for every risk, and uses as many team sources and techniques as possible to determine this. This would include interviews, expert judgment, brainstorming, Delphi techniques, etc. And the last step is to document assumptions made during this process. Using the probability and impact matrix, the project manager would determine the overall risk rating for a risk, and summarize this into a matrix format. Using standards and guidelines from the organizational assets for the rating assignments, the project manager then lists the risks in order of ranking. Here's an example of using a matrix that's been completed in order to assign the appropriate overall risk assessment to each risk. If you have a risk, for example, that has a medium impact, you'll see in the grid that that's a value of 0.40. And if it has a 20% chance or probability that it will happen, you can see that this risk then has an overall score of 0.08, which means that it's in the low threshold and is rated as green. You would perform the same calculation with all of the risks, and each one would get a threshold rating. This helps in determining which risks require further attention and monitoring. Obviously, those risks rated as red would receive the most attention. The Risk Data Quality Assessment is exactly what the name describes. It determines the usefulness of the data gathered to evaluate the risk, and it ensures that the data is unbiased and accurate. It places focus on the quality of the data used, the availability of data regarding the risks, clarity of the understanding of the risk, reliability and integrity of the data, and the accuracy of the data. Basically, it validates and verifies all of the data for accuracy. We've mentioned risk categories before when they were being defined. Now it's finally time to actually categorize the list of risks. The risk needs to be reviewed to determine the effects that the risk has on the project, and using the categories of risk, the project phase, and the work breakdown structure to determine what is impacted by the risk. As an aid to prioritizing the risks so that the important ones can be addressed first, a risk urgency assessment is performed. It's meant to determine how soon the potential risks might occur, to develop responses for those that will occur first, and it considers the triggers, the time to develop a response, the time to implement a response, and the risk rating. As with many other planning documents, after analysis is performed, additional information and clarity can be applied to completed documents as updates. This is normal progressive elaboration. Here, the risk register updates are the only output to the qualitative risk analysis process. The risk register would be updated with new information, such as the relative ranking or priority list of project risks using the probability impact matrix. A description of the basis for the assessment should also be included for the risks ranked as important. Risks grouped by categories can reveal the root cause of risks, the list of risks requiring responses in the near term, a list of risks for additional analysis and response, a watch list of low priority risks, and trends in qualitative risk analysis results. This concludes our review of the tools and techniques and the output for qualitative analysis. In the next section, we'll cover quantitative analysis.